Easingwold on the edge of the North Yorkshire moors. A quiet market town, but the mecca for the civil defence committed. For Easingwold is host to the Home Office Civil Defence College. It doesn't advertise its presence, and to some, the name at the end of the drive is ironically appropriate. Hawkishness too, perhaps, in the list of the teaching staff, a preponderance of retired brigadiers, wing commanders and lieutenant colonels.
The purpose of this particular college is to alert those people who have the responsibility to their authorities, organisations, duties in the civil defence world. And so we get here the people from various authorities and organisations, local authority in the main, the police, the fire service, the armed forces, central government departments, and over a 3.5-day course, or perhaps a shorter 2.5-day seminar, tell them and discuss with them what their responsibilities are in the civil defence field, in the way of implementing the statutory regulations that are in force. In the main, they are senior enough to decline the invitation to attend. They come in here a little bit on the wary side. I think the fact that we, as a college, are at the end of a rather long drive from the main road has meant that we're somewhat distant and therefore lends us an air of mystery, which is a straightforward, open Home Office establishment and not a Ministry of Defence establishment. The aim of the course, as much as anything, is for maybe the first time to raise questions in their mind. Where do I fit into this? Locally, when I get back home, who else is in on the act? Locally, when I get back home, who else do I have to work alongside with? In other words, not just myself doing the little planning in isolation, but above all, perhaps, on the Monday morning when I get back to my office, who should I make urgent contact with? That is the aim of the course, to alert, to make them aware of their particular responsibilities, but in no way to pretend that we are training them, because you can't train a person in 3.5 days.
And after the lectures and tutorials, the war game, in which the course participants take on their designated wartime roles. Called Operation Hot Seat, the exercise presumes that civil defence works and that survival is therefore a matter of resource management. For 2.5 days, the players work as structured emergency teams, while their erstwhile lecturers control the flow of information in and analyse the effects of the players' decisions.
If you can come up with a building which you think will be suitable, and we may not actually be able to do this under the exercise rules, but you would, I think, be looking around for a building and for volunteer staff.
Playing God 1 minute and bastard the next, according to one recent participant.
What we're really asking these officers to do is to see themselves against a background of scenario, what their roles might be in the event of a war. And really, as chief officers, they are carrying on with their peacetime responsibilities, but under the extraordinary circumstances of war. This is the point. It's not an action exercise where they're reacting to this incident or that. It is a sitting down at a certain period after a nuclear attack. Here is the background scenario. This is what has happened. This is the detail. What can we do now to help the survivors? How best can we use our resources? And this is really what it is, a sort of battle of resources, basically.
According to Home Office plans, the democratic process and centralised government in the UK will continue for as long as possible in a period of high international tension or even during a pre-nuclear conventional attack. But in advance of an imminent nuclear attack, government will scatter to 11 designated regions with an elected representative acting as a regional commissioner. Operation Hot Seat is probably the nearest to reality they will ever want to get. The wartime machinery of government lurching into operation. A 2-megaton bomb has fallen on the imaginary county of Knaptonshire. The county town has been decimated, but in the 3 suburban districts, emergency teams fight for survival. Housing officers cope with the homeless, health and medical officers with the sick and the dead. Food, water, transport, power. The bureaucrats do what they can. A scientific advisor decides on the safety of all operations, irrespective of the suffering that that decision may cause. It's 5 days after the strike.
This is the Regional Wartime Broadcasting Service. The time is just after 9 o'clock, and here is the second regional bulletin for the 6th of April. In the region, 2 large nuclear bursts occurred, one in Naptonshire and one in Denbighshire. Radioactivity is affecting many parts of the county, and everyone should stay in protected accommodation unless there is a vital need or reason to emerge. It is essential that you do everything possible to conserve your stored supplies of food and drinking water. The controller wishes to assure the residents of Naptonshire that everything possible is being done, and to emphasise once again that everyone must remain under cover until they are advised.
Okay. The general situation, the electricity board report, supplies now available intermittently in our district. City district's out completely. We're invited to list priorities for supply.
We have sufficient supplies within the district to feed them for the next period. But we will have to ask for intervention stocks for the subsequent.
But we have a problem, haven't we, John, here? Was it the A502? We're clogged up with refugees, aren't we, on this jump? Yeah. Have you got the police available? I think...
So we need manpower, transport.
I think at this stage the police should be able to round up some more transport from the Rushton area.
Most of whom will be destined for the continent. It will be vital that these plans and operations are not hindered by congested roads, by disruption to rail systems, or by lack of communications generally. In short, we shall be flat out moving to a war footing. Our major headache will be movement.
3 casualty clearing stations are now operational in Stratton, 2 in West Brisley. All are over capacity. There are no details yet from other areas. The ambulances have been
I said yesterday I can't give you blanket advice.
Right.
But if somebody comes to me and says, look, can I move somebody from here to here, and tells me how long a job will take, then I can work out whether it's safe or not, but I can't give you a blanket advice.
The convoy system to get out.
If the fallout warning sounds are heard, they will be like these. You should now move yourself and your family to the safest area in your fallout room. That is, you should get inside your inner refuge and stay there. After 2 days, the danger from fallout will get less, but don't take any risks by contact with it. The longer you stay in your refuge, the better it will be for you. Listen to your radio. Stay where you are and keep listening to your radio.
Wartime Broadcasting Service. The time is just after 9 o'clock, and here is the second regional bulletin for the 17th of April. First, the weather forecast. In the next few days...
When a decision had been made by government to implement the Wartime Broadcasting Service, announcements would be made on television
radiation levels
and on
in the
radio.
county of Naptonshire continue to decline, but please listen carefully to the instructions that apply to your particular district.
In terms of those surviving but injured, there are 32,000, with 15,000 of those with blast burns, 1,000 with blast burns and radiation, and 16,000 with radiation alone. There is a general decline.
You can requisition fuel in that period in those places where you've cleared all the, you've cleared the debris and you've cleared the roads. You can't requisition fuel if you can't physically get to the place to do it.
We've requisitioned all building materials for house repairs so that we can carry on now with the heavier building works in West Risley. We've continued to requisition fuel in private vehicles.
During a time of crisis, now one of those emergency regulations might be requisitioning, and as far as local authorities are concerned, this is perhaps likely to come late in the stages of a conventional war. But the thing is that as people have their property requisitioned, I think it's clear to everybody that requisitioning officers are going to need police assistance in performing their tasks. The next of our tasks is public warning, and as you've heard...
And now a reminder of some of the things we have told you in earlier films. Fallout can kill, though you cannot see it, feel it, or smell it. There is danger outside, so don't go outside. Stay in your fallout room until you are told it is safe to come out.
From most areas of the county come reports of high morale. One district controller praised the good sense and patience of the people in his area. Their behaviour and cooperation, he said, has been a major factor in restoring the situation throughout the district. In order to assist the medical services, all persons with first aid...
The major concern is that there are now outbreaks of gastroenteritis, particularly in association with apparent impurities in the water in the rest centres.
People in West Brisbane.
I'll get it.
Crash-related people in West Brisbane.
I have a report that there is an armed gang, 50 strong, who have stolen 5 or 6 lorries from East Epsom, could be heading south on the A938.
Are you ready for a gunfight?
Got it? And that's where the roadblock is.
A, you won't have a car, and B, there'll be nobody to enforce that. So the point I'm trying to make is that the definition of what is likely to be a crime and what is likely to be offence is likely to change in a post-nuclear situation.
Civil defence faces immense problems, and what I'm really saying to you is during this week, and perhaps this is my main message, let's not try and dwell too much on the difficulties, let's try and see what solutions they are for what is basically a humanitarian task.
I think it posed a lot of problems that I had never considered. It also suggests there are answers to those problems. If you could convert that exercise into practice, you could achieve something.
The main value of the exercise, I thought, was in exercising one's mind on the sorts of problems that you might encounter in a real-life situation. Although no way could you simulate a real-life situation in an exercise such as we've done over the last couple of days.
What it has done is brought into much clearer focus my ideas of civil defence and the procedures that would need to be adopted if we were to successfully carry out our roles in war.
I think the exercise setting portrayed one possible situation fairly accurately, actually.
I think the medical services would be able to do a large amount towards it, but in terms of the NHS as such, no doubt there would be a large upheaval, if you might call it that. So it all has to become very much simplified. To that extent, there would be a dramatic change and rethinking of priorities.
I think it will work. I think it's got a lot of problems to overcome, but there are occasions when you can look at an area and think, God, I wish I could go in there and get them out, but I can't because it would kill whoever I sent in to get them out, and you know that you've got people dying, and it becomes very realistic.
Endgame, the 75th play of Operation Hot Seat, another group of reasonably satisfied players. But not everyone is convinced of the wisdom or even the possibility of drawing real-life conclusions from the hot seat experience. The Peace Studies School at the University of Bradford has, at the invitation of the Home Office, studied the exercise and found it wanting.
I had spent about 6 years designing games, and I objected in the first instance to the misuse of the procedure of gaming. It was significant also because the lessons being drawn from the game by the staff and given to the players was that civil defence after nuclear war would work, would be useful. And I think all the debate since the time I saw Hot Seat in 1979-80 has shown more and more conclusively that civil defence after nuclear war is a nonsense.
The organisers argue that the game bears certainly a fairly good relationship to reality as they perceive it, and therefore is a valid exercise. Would you challenge that?
Yes, I think the facts of the matter are that the effects of an atomic nuclear war are indescribable. You've only got to have looked at some of the material on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to understand that it would be almost impossible to reproduce those kind of situations, anything like a real interpretation of those situations within a game.
So now this is just stage one of a very big training process. It'll take years, really, won't it, to get all of the local authority people through to a standard.
The problem is that this is an absolutely horrendous subject. Most of us, in all honesty, don't really want to address it. And yet, it is the worst possibility that we face. And we should address it. And when we address it, we should bring the critical faculties we bring to bear in our ordinary everyday lives to bear on this issue, and we should be prepared to ask the hard questions, and we should not go along with the kind of simplistic notions that are often put abroad to deceive, manipulate, mislead.
Those folk are good enough to spare their time to be with us for 2.5 to 3.5 days. If they come with open minds, then they would probably see that they have a job of work to do. If they come with closed minds, and some do, they would refuse to accept that they have a job of work to do. There are also people who come with open minds and at the end say, well, I'm totally unconvinced. So be it. One cannot expect 100% conversions, if that was the word that you used, or 100% from our point of view, ensuring that people are alerted to their particular responsibilities. And so, this is a fact of life. And in any case, let's face it, no one is ever pretending that civil defence is going to be 100% effective. It can't possibly be. Because if it were to be, then there would be survivors. All people would survive all forms of attack, and all would continue to live from then on. That is a total impossibility. And so therefore, all we can ever claim for civil defence is that it will have some effect. That as a result of civil defence measures, there will be more survivors than there would be without them. And those survivors have a better chance of surviving than without civil defence measures.